Hello, dear friends. We are so glad you're here to learn about the reality of dissociative identity disorder. Welcome to Season 3. We are your hosts, Drew
and Garden System,
a couple of multiples.
We are a married couple, and we both have dissociative identity disorder. Did you know that 120 million people across the globe live with dissociative identity disorder and are often misdiagnosed for 6 to 12 years?
We hope to help educate and dispel myths about DID to help people find the right diagnosis and appropriate treatment as quickly as possible.
Please visit acoupleofmultiples.com and sign up for our mailing list to stay up to date with our podcast, our private paid online DID community called Hearts Multiplied, and to book consultations.
That's right. Drew and Garden System are now offering consultation to help educate and support those living with and treating dissociative identity disorder. You can book an appointment with either Garden System or both Drew and Garden System right from our website, acoupleofmultiples.com.
We hope you enjoy this episode and learn something new.
We appreciate all of our reviews, and we love to hear from you, dear listener, about what you enjoyed the most. We are honored to have multiple sponsors for Season 3. You can find links to each sponsor's webpage in the show notes of every episode and on our website under the Listen to Our Podcast tab. The Institute for Creative Mindfulness, one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, is directed by Dr. Jamie Plus Marich, the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural and offers the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We felt so validated when we were able to authentically participate in this training as Garden System. Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers.
Bearings therapy is different from anything you've ever tried. You spend your nights worrying about whether you did the right thing, whether you're failing your family, how you and your spouse don't connect anymore, and those things haunt you at night.
You don't feel comfortable talking to anyone. A, you don't want to relive it, and B, you're not interested in talking about your garbage. You may feel lost right now, but I'll be your compass. Get your bearings. Call me today, 214-892-2158. As a certified internal family systems licensed therapist, Tiffany Morgan, owner of Holistic Self-Healing Psychotherapy, specializes in working with dissociative identities through IFS and sculpting.
Known affectionately as Ocean, she brings lived experience with dissociative identities and anorexia, offering consulting, psychotherapy, training, and authoring a book on personal and professional experiences in these areas.
Visit www.tiffanycobb with 2 B's, Morgan.com. www.tiffanycobbmorgan.com or call 520-582-9313 for more information.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to this innermost personal episode on intimacy with Drew
and Garden System,
a couple of multiples.
This is the episode where we're going to get super real and honest about all things intimacy and DID. And we want to start off by reminding everyone that every system is unique. Every relationship is unique. And your experiences may be much different from ours. And also, we don't have all the answers. We do really believe this topic is super important and extremely complex to navigate. We will share our thoughts, our opinions, and our experiences with all of you.
That being said, we believe there is a natural trigger warning with this topic. Dear friends, please take care of yourselves while listening. If you need to pause and take in chunks at a time, please do so.
There are so many numerous reasons that make physical intimacy complicated when you have dissociative identity disorder. Various selves will have different views and preferences about these encounters and different triggers. Dealing with flashbacks and body memories can be disruptive to the ability to engage, even to the point of wanting to refuse engagement in the physical acts altogether. And trying to manage switching and who is fronting can create challenges. When switching during the middle of all the things can create confusion for oneself in addition to creating confusion for their partner. Maybe a good starting point is to talk about the various types of selves and how they might show up in a romantic sexual relationship.
I think that's a great idea. Like, are we talking about adult parts that do everyday life type of stuff, how they show up? And teens and littles and animal parts and sexual parts?
Yeah.
There's lots of different types of parts that we could give examples of in our own lives. Maybe we can start by talking about our adult selves that do everyday life sort of stuff. For instance, there's me, Lizzie, that goes to work and does a lot of the teaching and a lot of the adulting in general. For the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to talk about my parts separately. But the reality of my system currently is that a few of my main everyday life parts have begun fusing, so we aren't so separate anymore. But for the sake of this conversation, I will talk about them as separate parts. So, for me, Lizzie, who teaches and grocery shops and is out about 80% of the time, and therefore interacts the most with Garden System, the fact that I'm triggered by romance and sex has impacted our relationship a lot. I don't show up in the ways I would want to in this area of our life, and that has been a huge work in progress that we have spent a lot of time and energy trying to make better, so to speak. We will get into the things we have tried and what has worked for us and what hasn't worked for us a little later in this episode. Okay, I have more adult selves that do everyday life sort of things, but Garden System, why don't you start talking about your adult selves as well?
For our system, our adult selves are not the ones triggered by sex. They do, however, have different values around sexual relationships, with various different sexual drives and desires. And the triggers showed up when one self would violate another self's values. Most of my adult selves definitely value having a long-term monogamous relationship and find enjoyment in the sexual aspect of the relationship. Keelara is maybe a bit hypersexual, and physical intimacy is extremely important to her. Leanna and Sadie don't necessarily feel as strong of a need for sex as Keelara does.
I think it's good that you bring up values here because values do have a lot to do with how different selves interact and what their preferences might be. It is difficult when selves have very different values or very different preferences. This is where conflict tends to happen. Just as Garden System was saying about her system, most of my system also prefers and values monogamy and having a long-term relationship. Also, most of my selves, except for me, Lizzie, are not really triggered by sex or romance, and many want to have that as part of their experience. I do have quite a few parts that don't care about monogamy, but they also aren't so set on being in multiple relationships with others that they can't respect the parts of us that do really have strong opinions about being in a monogamous relationship. For them, as long as they have a chance to be sexual when they're out, then they're happy enough. I'd also like to add that many of these parts that don't spend a ton of time out in the body are very active in our internal world. And many have relationships with each other within our internal world, which provides the fulfillment they need. Sometimes I am not aware of what's going on internally with my others being in relationships with each other. We will do an entire episode on internal relationships, meaning relationships selves have with each other within one system.
Yeah. Keelara does not have her heart set on monogamy like the others in our system do, but she doesn't necessarily need to have a polyamorous lifestyle. She's content so long as she does get to experience being in a relationship. She's also willing to honor monogamy for the others in our system. And you touched on another interesting aspect of relationships and physical intimacy, and that is how selves can have their own relationships with other selves internally. Ironically enough, Keelara and Victoria had their own little internal fling at one point. That is no longer a current thing for the two of them, but was definitely a little interesting internally while it was going on. Another difficulty with intimate relationships as a system is the fact that not all selves share the same gender or sexual orientation. Some selves may be female while others are male. Some might identify as heterosexual, homosexual, or bisexual. And keeping track of all of it is a pretty big task. With all of these differences, there often is a lot of internal conflict going on.
Yes, it can be very difficult navigating a monogamous relationship when different parts have a different idea about who they would want to be with. But for Garden System and I, this doesn't tend to be much of a problem because there are multiple selves in both of our systems that have formed relationships with each other. At first, this really started happening by accident when we didn't know each other's parts very well yet. And for me, I was purposely trying not to be, quote, too weird too quickly. But honestly, there is really no way to hold back the monstrosity of weirdness that makes up all of me's. I remember early on in our relationship, in one of our first few encounters, I heard myself meow at Garden System. I was absolutely horrified and hoped she hadn't heard it and we could move on without things becoming awkward. Turns out her white Siberian tiger Snow was out when I had meowed at her. And well, that explains that. Felines unite? It still makes me laugh to this day. And really, that was just the beginning.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I think our different selves were sensing each other for sure. Drew has a lot of kitties inside, and we have one big kitty, Snow, our white Siberian tiger. That was definitely an unexpected switch. Snow is usually a protector and hasn't ever been near the front for physical intimacy. Yeah, I'm laughing and shaking my head at the memory of it all, but in the moment, nothing felt weird at all.
And that was the amazing part of it. It wasn't weird, and she didn't think I was weird. It totally worked. After that, more and more of our parts started finding each other. One relationship that formed that would seem totally unexpected, but works really well, is the relationship that formed between my teen part Pink and Garden System's teen part Maisie. Pink is a bubbly, happy, no care in the world, extroverted, free-spirited, more color the better type of soul. And Maisie is, well, Maisie is not. Garden System, why don't you explain for our lovely listeners all about Maisie?
So this one is a little more complicated. Maisie is definitely a Wednesday Addams type of girl. However, she wasn't the first of ourselves to really fall in love with Pink. At first, Keelara was really enamored with Pink, and over time, Maisie started peeking out more and more. Maisie is about 14 and was getting super interested in how the relationship was evolving between all of us and all of Drew. Maisie was definitely attracted by all of the oppositeness that enveloped Pink, and Pink really seemed to get a kick out of Maisie's death glares.
Yes, Pink sees Maisie's death glares as an opportunity to charm a wee smile out of Maisie, which Pink finds rather fun. This relationship is definitely the definition of opposites attract. But unfortunately, it seems without Pink meaning to make Keelara feel sad about liking Maisie, the relationship has caused Keelara sad, abandoned type of feelings, even though Pink is still happy to interact or be sexual with Keelara when she is out. Yeah, hurt feelings can definitely happen within the relationships.
And this is one of those challenges of having DID and being in a relationship with someone else who also has DID. It is inevitable and more complicated when working with all of the selves and the relationships that form and evolve over time. Keelara felt a heavy sense of rejection when Maisie came on the scene, and that was disruptive internally for us. It feels confusing to be in a relationship that on one hand makes us feel secure and also sometimes still feel pangs of rejection.
Yes, the interesting part of our relationship, being two systems with DID, is that we are technically monogamous with each other, yet we kind of aren't, since there are many relationships going on between us. I think there needs to be a new term for this because we technically aren't polyamorous, yet we kind of are. See? Complicated. So yes, sometimes parts step on each other's toes, and well, I think the most important thing ends up being communication. What do you think, Garden System?
Communication is important, and communication is also more than just using your words. Maybe we could call ourselves monopolys.
Oh my goodness, I freaking love that. Monopolies?
Monopolys.
Yes, communication is more than just words. Can you talk about that, Garden System?
Communication encompasses body language and actions, and each of us has different body languages and facial expressions that we make. And each of us has our own set of behaviors, and these things send messages to our loved one. The little things really matter sometimes, like bringing flowers home or taking care of a thing that really matters to the other, especially when it's one of us that doesn't particularly like that thing, like a chore or just being helpful in some way.
Yes, and body language and facial expressions also lets me know when you are royally pissed off at something. And I'm wondering if it's me. The frustrating part is that oftentimes Garden System has trouble with coming right out with whatever is pissing her off. She's silent and looks deadly. And then I'm stuck wondering, and sometimes asking her questions makes her look more pissed off.
How could I ever be royally pissed off at my amazing and beautiful wife?
When you are, you are.
To be fair, several of us just have amazing resting bitch faces.
Indeed.
More often than not, we're royally pissed off at all of our own selves. There were times when selves would be so angry and upset with each other over decisions regarding sexual partners and the pursuit of relationships. Let's take a quick trip back in time for a moment to some of our previous relationships.
Yeah, well, we will get back to why you get pissed off sometimes later. Miss, change the subject much. Our parts have had many different thoughts and feelings about the relationships we have been a part over the years. Our first marriage to a man ended for a few reasons. One of them being that our littles were very triggered and scared by his anger. The other was because I, Lizzie, ended up falling in love with a woman that I met online. It was definitely not intentional. I started talking to her on a support site for sexual abuse survivors. At that point in my life, I still believed that having a relationship with a woman would have me end up in hell, and I didn't want to go to hell. So, like I said, unintentional. But as you can imagine, it caused a lot of conflict both for my dying relationship with my now ex-husband and for me internally, since I discovered part of me were attracted to women. After that, we did end up in a relationship with a woman that lasted for a total of 10 years. All of my selves liked her to varying degrees, which was good. However, Lizzie, who is the one out in the body the majority of the time, figured out that I couldn't deal with not being able to have sex with her without being triggered, which led to me not wanting to have sex or forcing myself to have sex so my girlfriend could get some of what she needed and wanted. I ended up feeling like I was hurting my girlfriend and ruining her life, since physical intimacy was her love language. I left the relationship hoping she would be able to find someone that was able to meet her needs. Garden System and I were friends before and during the time that relationship ended. I could tell Garden System wanted to be with me, but I didn't think that would be a good idea considering what ended my last relationship. She said that she didn't care if we never had sex, which made me think, hey, maybe this would be the perfect relationship. I can be with my best friend and we can do life together and I won't ruin her life.
So we remember that a bit differently. And that's one of the other difficult things about being in a relationship with another person with DID. We both lose time. We both have different memories of how things went down. Although such things can happen with singlets and relationships too, but with both of us having DID, not just one of us, can be blamed, so to speak, for switching and forgetting how it was. We remember running into some difficulties with intimacy between us and asking if our relationship needed to be platonic. However, I can totally imagine one of us saying this in the very, very beginning based off of how we felt having sex with men.
I think it's important to remember that when there are differences in memory, that both ways it was remembered are valid, because that memory for each person is real. And one never knows exactly how one will feel until they are actually in a relationship. And Garden System had never actually been in a relationship with a woman. So it's safe to say that me, Lizzie, being pretty triggered when it comes to sex, has definitely affected my relationship with Garden System. Both of us are determined to stay in the relationship, so we have tried many different things so far to help the situation. Some have worked and helped, and others haven't. What works or doesn't work for us might not work or will possibly work for your specific situation, dear listener. They are all ideas, which we will share momentarily.
We have selves that absolutely love sex, selves that are indifferent, selves that don't want to be touched, and selves that attempt to reenact trauma through sex. And with all of our previous relationships being with men, we had parts that wanted nothing to do with sex until we started dating women. We had dated several boys in middle school and high school, but we came from such a purity culture that sex was definitely off the table until marriage, so I was not really aware of my sexual feelings or preferences during those times. Then we started dating our now ex-husband at college. I was all about becoming a mom and having children, and in many ways, my ex-husband was just the path to accomplish that goal. There ended up being a lot of issues around sex that were mostly avoided as our relationship had so many other problems, one being neither of us knew I had DID. It was a rather toxic relationship, and I finally came up with a solution to get me and the children out of it. Then the good, pure Christian girl seemed to fall to the wayside, and we started running around a lot. We went from one toxic boyfriend to the next until we gave up on relationships and just started hooking up with random guys, sometimes without ever knowing their name. We would sometimes get glimpses of fantasies in our minds of women, but those were typically squashed down as unacceptable. We were able to settle the system down a little bit and got into another steady relationship with the male, and it became apparent that we were having a lot of trauma responses to sexual encounters. Flashbacks were at an all-time high, and we were freezing during sex. The conflict between Victoria and Keelara was at an all-time high. Victoria is our conservative self holding on to some strict Christian views about sex and relationships, and Keelara was our attention-seeking, sex-driven part who was using some of this running around as a way to self-harm and as a way to dissociate from all of our other problems. We had no idea how much our views about sex would change when we started dating women. Being in this relationship with Drew has really shifted our feelings about sexual encounters.
How has it shifted your feelings about sexual encounters?
Well, we went from finding it disdainful, gross, and a chore, and also traumatizing, to, enjoying it, looking forward to it, finding it fun, and feeling safe to explore those aspects of myself without shame. I don't know if it's because you're a woman or I'm really lesbian, or only because I really trust you and feel truly safe with you.
Well, your answer here is a little happy and a little sad for me. I'm glad you really trust and truly feel safe with me. But also, it's sad because we as a system are still trying to figure out how to be with yous in this way and not be triggered because of past shit. It's something we have worked hard on for a very long time. One thing recently that has helped is that natural fusion has started happening for me. Me, Lizzie, isn't just me, Lizzie, much of the time anymore. It feels like I'm becoming a permanent state of we And it's a really good thing. Since almost all of my other parts aren't triggered in the ways I have been triggered in the past with being in a sexual relationship, it has made our sexual experiences less triggering in general. It hasn't been a quick, instant fix, and we still have to implement many of the more recent ideas and plans we have figured out might work. But what I am saying for those of you out there that also have the struggle of wanting to be in a romantic, intimate relationship, but get triggered by being in one, is that things shift and change over time with lots of personal trauma healing work. So this might be the time to bring up some of the things we have tried and to also talk about some of the more current things we are trying now. So some of the things that I've tried in the past regarding being triggered and still being in a sexual romantic relationship are things like scheduling sex. This definitely had its negatives and positives. On one hand, we knew when it was going to happen and we could prepare ourselves the best we could and put littles away or plainly just decide who was going to be out. The drawbacks of planning it is if we were truly having a bad day that day and felt like it had to happen because it was planned, we would feel like we failed if it didn't happen. And then we went to not planning it for a specific day, but at least marking it down on a calendar when it did occur so that we knew how much and when it was happening. This helped us know how long it had been. Garden System, desiring sex much more than us, could verify actually how long between times it had been, and this could perhaps dissipate some of the angst and sometimes anger that we noticed was coming up. What I was actually referring to earlier when I said she was becoming pissed. I know she loves me so much right now.
Yes, scheduling it was definitely a complete disaster. One of the hardest parts about dealing with all of this is the negative thought spirals that would start going on in our head. It was so easy to fall into negative thoughts like, she doesn't care. She's oblivious. We're not really attractive to her. She doesn't trust us. We are a threat and not a place of safety. So therefore, we are a horrible, terrible person. We would find ourselves counting the days and arguing about how long it's really been. And all of that just made everything worse.
Yeah. And of course, me feeling her frustration and what seemed like anger at times made things worse for me, leading me to trying to have sex when I really didn't want to, which I know in turn made her feel like, well, what did that make you feel like?
Like I was a horrible person. Like I was just as shitty as a perpetrator. Like what the hell was so wrong with me that I was so all over the place emotionally?
And all of this made me feel absolutely hopeless. Here I was with my best friend, and she wasn't feeling loved in the way she needed to be or desired like she wanted to feel. That is never what I would want the person I love to feel. But all of it led to more horrible spirals of me trying to do something I honestly couldn't do with my whole heart. My heart was set far apart from sexual acts long, long ago. How do you get your heart back into something that had been used to hurt you for so long? One thing I do know is that Garden System has not thrown me away because of this. Even though it is frustrating and upsetting, she continues to reassure me that we will figure this out. And I continue to reassure her that I do very much want to figure this out. What I do know is that love heals, and love is the only thing that can heal a heart. I don't know how long it will take for things in our sexual relationship to be more natural. I do know that taking our current let's not have it on the table approach has helped. It has taken the pressure off of me, and we have it right now where if I feel like it's a good time, then it happens. If not, it wasn't expected. And I think this helps Garden System feel less disappointed. What do you think, Garden System? I mean, obviously, it's not perfect.
Well, as you can see, it is so easy for both of us to fall down the spiral of negative thoughts and blame ourselves. We both were feeling so bad about ourselves that we were actually hurting each other in the process. Sexual intimacy can really make the emotions run high, and it can create a lot of internal chaos for each of us. It hurts to hear you use the words thrown away like that. There has been so much sadness around this subject, and we did move to take sex off the table for an indeterminate amount of time. And just having no pressure and no expectations was a bit of relief at first.
So it was a relief at first. How is it now?
Well, it's not really off the table anymore, and it's a work in progress. So, I don't know really.
You are a woman of so many words.
Don't you know it, wifey?
Folks, this is why communication is important, because in my view, it is still off the table and on the table whenever it is that it is okay. See? Confusing and complex.
So it is off the table for me, but not for you. Hence, it's not really off the table. Yeah, it's complex, all right.
And there you have it. Well, there is really a ton more to talk about. I feel like we have just barely started diving into this topic, honestly. We haven't talked about our experiences with all of ourselves in the moment and what we do with all that. We still need to address littles and the hot topic of intimacy. Also, sexual alters.
Exactly. We haven't even touched on all the different types of alters that might show up sexually. There's a lot to cover, and it probably will take a couple of episodes to do so. So stay tuned, folks. There will be more episodes that get into deeper details of how multiplicity affects sexual intimacy.
Yeah, it will be like a mini series on intimacy within the season on relationships. I'm down.
Stay tuned for the epic love story of Drew and Garden System.
Wifey, I think you may be overshooting the epicness of this, but yes, definitely stay tuned, peoples.
We are totally epic.
Okay, yes, truly epic. Thank you all for hanging with
A Couple of Multiples.
We are honored to have multiple sponsors for Season 3. You can find links to each sponsor's webpage in the show notes of every episode and on our website under the Listen to Our Podcast tab. The Institute for Creative Mindfulness, one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, is directed by Dr. Jamie Plus Marich, the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural and offers the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We felt so validated when we were able to authentically participate in this training as Garden System. Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers. Dr. Wendy Aporta with Bearings Therapy is a marriage and family therapist specializing in military and first responder individuals, families, and couples. She is proficient with clients experiencing PTSD, CPTSD, and dissociative disorders.
For her, helping those with traumatic experiences is not just a job, it is a vocation. She is experienced in multiple modalities and utilizes whatever is best for her clients' needs. She stays abreast of the latest research and treatments to provide the best possible outcomes for her clients. Call Bearings Therapy today, 214-892-2158. From your hosts, Drew
and Garden System.
Thank you for listening to A Couple of Multiples, the reality of dissociative identity disorder. This podcast is intended for educational purposes and is not a replacement for therapy.
Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapeutic relationship with the hosts or any guest speakers.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear what you enjoyed the most.
You can visit our website at acoupleofmultiples.com for additional information, including how to join our new online paid community called Hearts Multiplied, to book a consultation session, to access additional resources, and to also subscribe to our mailing list to receive future updates.
Remember, every system is unique, and your experiences may be different from ours, and that's okay. You matter and are loved for being all of yous.